Hello, all you ghouls and ghosts out there. We're back with another chapter to what we call Killer Cuts. I'm Bobby Munson, and beside me, the natural Astrid Pizarro. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, and finally, we get the opportunity. We wanted to give some
Mhm.
leeway to everybody out there before we started giving spoiler heavy reviews here on Killer Cuts when it comes to Scream 6. So that's why the little bit of a gap between doing this and our very first edition. We're going to put that ticker right at the bottom so nobody can get upset. This is
Mhm.
spoiler heavy conversation. We're going to be talking about all the things coming out of Scream 6. Now, I want to say, first of all, anybody who hasn't done so already, I will try to post the link in the description and above as well too, so you can go check out the first edition of Killer Cuts because we were on target with some of the predictions when it came to this movie. Between the two of us, we unfolded
Yeah.
a few different things. And as I was sitting there in the theater watching this with my wife, I'm like, oh my God, I just kind of want to turn and talk out loud right now to her and be like, I can't believe that some of the
Mhm.
stuff we predicted. I had to keep leaning over and whispering, like, oh my God, I called, the detective
Yeah.
or the officer. But, you also kind of mentioned there about parents or family and mentioned Reggie's family in this one, completely saying that
Yeah.
we never met them, we never knew anything about them. And oh my
Mm-mm.
goodness, again, as the reveal came from this one, we not only got one, not two, but three Ghostface reveals, and all three of them are family looking
Mm.
for revenge. That was the big reveal. That's what made this different. Is we actually had three involvement here, and we're going to talk all about the Easter eggs throughout this thing and all the things that it ties back to as major fans of the series. But I first want to talk about the reveal on this one. How did you feel when you finally found out what the big reveal was, that this was Richie's family? Sorry, and the fact that they were working together in a revenge plot. Finally, no more doing this because of the stab movies. This one was straight
Mhm.
up nod to part two, in my opinion.
Yeah, I was at first I was a little bit spoiled on TikTok about like the review. Like I had seen a like I don't want to say picture, but like kind of like a GIF kind of thing um of Bailey and Ethan. So I only knew two of them. I didn't know the third one coming into this. But I was like wondering who the heck are these people and how are they connected to the story? So it still was a surprise to me, like at the end watching this. And I remember thinking first, and my brother had the same thought process that I did, watching like Quinn fake her death because it was weird that we didn't see her really die versus everybody else we did. So that was the first thing that made me think about this. But it also like the theme of itself at the end with all three of them made me think back of Scream 2 because we have Mrs. Loomis, getting revenge on Sidney because she killed her son. So we think of that as well. In the fact that we had the college settings, I was like, oh, this feels like Scream 2 all over again in a sense. Um, but not only that, but you said three, but to me, I always kind of like basically it was four and even sometimes even five ghost faces in one movie. So it's incredible to think that we had that many ghost faces in one movie in itself. This is the most we had in one. But I feel like the theme of like the family revenge, I think it was exactly something that should have, it's exactly what should have been done. It was the only way to, I feel like, connect one to the other one and that continuity that we have from one to the other one going forward. So it did make sense to me. It took me a little bit. There was also like parts of like Ethan was really suspicious to me from the beginning just because he kept disappearing every so often from the screen. So I had an idea that he was part of it. And then like I think I said it before in the preview, going back to the shrine, I had an idea that it had to be a cop somehow to get all that evidence going forward. So I automatically thought it was a cop. I just didn't know it was Bailey though. That one like threw me off for that moment. I thought it was going to be end up somebody else, but I liked the reveal the way it happened. I feel like it kept me on my toes. And once it I everything was revealed, I was like, okay, I can think back and connect back to the dots to what happened earlier. What about you?
For sure. Yeah. And I mean, I did like this reveal because, again, in our previous conversation, I mentioned that I don't want another stab related Ghostface reveal at this point. I want somebody who has a different meaning. And I talked a lot about having multiple ghost faces because I was thinking the cult of
Mhm.
Ghostface. Didn't quite get the cult of Ghostface, but
I
we
mean,
got those
kind
three.
of, kind
Kind of.
of.
Yeah. I mean, we
'Cause-
did get three, which is
Yeah,
pretty
not
cool.
only that, but what I remember watching the opening scene what like happened with forgot I keep forgetting his name, Jason. What happened with Jason and his friend, and the way they kept saying that they wanted to continue on Richie's movie, I was like, this reminds me of the cult part that you were talking about in our discussion. So it's like, so it feels like they kind of had a cult, and I keep thinking, what if in Scream 7 there's other people that still want to continue Richie's movie as well, and we kind of get that kind of cult storyline going to the other one too. So I maybe think of that when I was watching it though.
Oh, perfect. Because again, I'm not totally convinced we're not going to go down that path just yet, especially with the
Yeah.
way this one went. Again, they might have gone revenge plot this time, but again, how do you keep expanding from where they've gone? And they like to try to give us different. You also mentioned about Bailey's death in this one being staged, and I thought that was a cool nod because I know I always had a theory, and I know I've read now a lot of people have this theory about Randy Meeks when it comes to part two, and the fact that at that point in time, and again throughout 1, 2, and 3, he is the only person that is ever off screen in terms of the killing. He is pulled into a van. We see a Ghostface hand going up with a knife, and then we kind of get a brief glimpse of Randy's body with blood covered on it. Very reminiscent of what we got with Bailey's death as well, too. I thought, again, we see Ghostface in the room because we see that the neighbor watching from across the street can witness this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
but not much more than that. And before I forget, a cool little nod is in that particular scene when they're in the kitchen on the refrigerator, you'll see a magnet on the refrigerator for Ice Nine Kills the band, who does all their songs dedicated to horror movies, including having one I recently sent you for the Scream franchise. So it was a nod from the directors to Ice Nine Kills for their work as well too. I thought was a nice little Easter egg. But so many nods in terms of like what they were doing with paying fan service. Again, even there was the moment where they're finally at the shrine when Kirby actually is talking to, I believe, sorry, I'm going to get the names wrong here. Is it Mindy? Mindy. Okay,
Yeah.
so her and Mindy are having that conversation about, oh, this is Stu Macher, the TV that killed Stu Macher, and then Kirby turns around. If you believe that he's actually dead,
Yes.
and I was like, okay, I like that they're playing on it.
Yeah.
It's the fact they're hearing what the fans are saying, and they're pulling back to it. So I thought that was a cool touch. But you mentioned the beginning, and I want to go back to there because this one starts off sort of in what you'd expect Scream to start off in. So we got, girl at a bar waiting for a date. She gets a mysterious phone call from him saying he can't find the place. All of a sudden it turns into, hey, this is the ghost face on the phone, lured her into an alley. She gets stabbed. Okay. But then the weird part was he reveals himself right then and there. And that's where the twist happened with this. And I thought that was a nice touch because in every single one prior, we never got anything of the sort. And in this one, we did. What a nice little way to play into it. And then that wasn't really the main death in the first scene or whatever, because it led to this particular Ghostface and his partner being knocked off by the band of three, which I thought was fantastic. And the actual line when Ghostface turns to him and goes, I don't care about the movies, as they go in for that kill right there. Just awesome. How did you feel about the way they opened this one? Was a different feeling for you too?
Yeah, I like that because when you think about it, I feel like most of the movies end up with an opening with somebody in a house somehow. And I feel like this is it. It was different from what happened with Jenna, but at the same time, I kept thinking Jenna had such a unique opening scene as well. So I may think of like I like how their opening scenes are iconic, but also different because even though like we had Jenna and the first in Scream 5, she didn't get killed, and it's the first person not to get killed in an opening scene. So that was something new for us. And then not only to have this, but like she doesn't get the regular landline phone call. She doesn't, she's not at her house. She's out and about. That's the first thing. And having Samira Weaving come out here and be in her accent and everything, which is something that I wasn't expecting when I could hear her voice. And not only that aspect of it, but the aspect of, like you said, this is the first time we get an opening scene that we get a Ghostface reveal, like right from the get go. So I was like, wait, how is that possible? And I feel like usually, I don't want to say all the time, but like I would say like most of the time the killings are done in a house, trying to like keep it, I don't want to say secretive, but it's more like it feels like more in hiding. And this was in plain sight. There was people walking by because it was a couple nights before Halloween. There was people dressed up and people out and about, and with other people walking around. Being New York City, there's people always walking in New York City, and nobody was there to see him get out, like undressed from the Ghostface costume, and there was nobody really there to like defend her either way if they saw it, and like there was nobody around. So I thought that was super interesting as well. So I liked how we get the opening scene, we get the phone call like we usually get, but there's still something different about it as well, which is something that I enjoy for both opening scenes that we had in Scream 5 and 6 so far.
Yeah, I think the directors do a fantastic job of not only understanding what Wes's vision was when he was directing it, what Kevin Williamson intended for the series and writing it, but these guys they just understand horror. They know how to make the right types of scares. I know a lot of people reviewed this thing saying this is the scariest one so far, in a sense, and I understand why they'd say it. A lot of people will probably find it that way because you just don't know, because like you said, it's based in New York City, a large city. Ghostface running around in broad daylight in the evening, whenever it is, streets full of people, but everybody's in costume. And that's where it starts to become a little bit more crazy, because some people are dressed up as Ghostface. One person on the subway even dressed up as the Ghostface from the Scream TV series as well too. But we got people in pinhead masks. We got, Jason Voorhees mask, Michael Myers mask throughout this entire thing. Anybody could be anybody under these masks. You just don't know, and it leaves a real kind of creepy factor. And as you see the moving background on our screen here tonight, the subway scene, I wondered what this was going to be like when it came to the trailer. You're looking at it, you're thinking, could this be something that's just being thought up? Is this a dream sequence? What is this exactly? And when they explained it's Halloween and everything that goes down, this was done beautifully. I really like this subway scene. This was a perfect moment, and it didn't kill it by having the stuff that they have in the trailer, because there is so much more that happens when it comes down to Mindy and Ghostface on the, I'm gonna forget the name, the other killer, not Bailey, not
Ethan, yeah.
Ethan, yes. So Ethan and Mindy on the other train. This is where I think I was certain Ethan was one of the killers. I had kind of had my suspicions earlier. All the things they were saying, him not being in certain places, I'm like, this kid's up to no good. Like, seriously up to no good. And then all of a sudden in this scene, I was like, okay. I'm like, you beat me over the head with it. Ethan's one of the killers. But I definitely, I'll credit, I didn't necessarily know that Bailey, his sister, was going to be back. I didn't know they were going to stage that one exactly. So that's a cool nod. But the subway scene, how did you feel about this? How this one played out? I mean, this one being one of my favorites in the entire film.
The best way I can describe it, I feel like it tricked me, because from the trailer, I really thought that Mindy was in the train with the rest of them. I just thought it was perhaps on a different side of the same subway. I didn't think it was a whole different subway in it itself, the way they kept going back and forth between both scenes were in the trailer. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, this is interesting, because it seem like it was just one whole scene, but it just like a back and forth between both subways there, subway trains. But I had an idea from Ethan, like I said from the beginning, because first he disappeared when like the first big attack happened, and not only that, but the guy was wearing plaid half of the movie. So I was like, that gave it away for me too. That was my clue that he was it. Um, but it itself, I think, is also interesting, because when you think about the subway, you think of like other people, like when you're looking in the background. So it's like, how do you get away with a kill right there and there when so many people standing by? And it just makes you think of like not only the people not care, because that's another aspect to it, like people don't care what happens in the subway. If they if it happens, it happens. They don't stand by it and do anything. But also like to think like the people next to her were sleeping, so they didn't see her. And even quote unquote, when you think about the movie like this, Ethan was right there and he didn't see it, even if you think about it from that aspect, from that point of view. So I think it was also interesting thinking about it, because it made me think of like, how do you get away with it? And then seeing how it played off, I was like, not bad. It's like, that was better than I expected it to be. And the way they played off on scene. Yeah, I enjoy the scene a lot though.
Yeah, me too. Quite a lot. Going to be some other scenes we want to talk about, but why don't go over to talking about some of the people in this movie and their roles in it. Who was a standout for you in terms of new faces added to this one? Was there any one in particular person in this one that really stood out like a sore thumb that wasn't in one of the previous editions of Scream?
I would say the one that really stood out to me was Danny, because I like that he was smart. I feel like usually in the horror movies you have the characters and they add and they make some decisions that are so dumb. And I love from the get go of like he sees Ghostface with Quinn and he's like trying to get her attention, try to call the group Sam and Tara, and like the way he just airdrops on the video so they know that something's happening to Quinn, and even try to escape, like trying to help them with the ladder. And I like that even towards the third act, and it's like when she tells him, it's like, you're not Woodsboro. I want you to stay safe, so you stay out here. And he stayed out there. But not only that, but he brought reinforcements later on as we saw the cops coming in. And he's like, well, I had to call somebody because I figured you weren't coming out. Like you would take you long coming out of here. So I was like, this dude is smart. What, can you make it a
Yeah,
core 5? Because I want him in the next one. And I love like he didn't get like offended by like the way she told him to like stay off because he wasn't part of the group or part of the like the origin of the story. And I like how he understood it, and he always told her like after Annika's death, he's like, don't trust anybody, not even me. And I like how little bits and pieces like that, like I was like, this dude is so freaking smart. This is like I feel like almost the first in this movie in this type of way, but I like that he stood out to me because his decisions were reasonable. I think the only part, and this was obviously to make you suspicious of him, is like when he didn't arrive on time to really help Gale, even though he was on the same, I think it was the Upper West Side, if I'm not mistaken. Um, but that was just obviously to give you suspicion towards him. But I never suspected him because I kept thinking they already did the love interest in Scream 5. They're not going
yeah,
to do it again. So I already discarded him from like the get go. Um, but he's the one that stood out to me the most out of the characters in this one. And even like that, and seeing Kirby here back again, and the thing that stood out to me with her was her looking at the shrine and looking at Jill's clothing and thinking, like, I can imagine like her as a character in her mind having flashbacks to like, my friend is the one that tried to kill me to make herself famous. And thinking about those scars that it leaves you. And not only that, but she's like, oh, this is the scar that Charlie left me, and showing them the scar that she had. And thinking back of the shrine and looking at everything the way she was looking at, even the scene that she had with Mindy of like that kiki scene of going back and forth about the movies too. So she has so many great scenes that I love having her. And at first in the third act, I thought it would, I didn't say it was smart, but it was kind of clever, I would say, the way they, Bailey pointed the finger at her and then he convinced the girl so easily. But that's another thing that I loved about this whole thing. But I think if it's somebody from the originals, Kirby's the one that stood out to me. But I do want to say though, and no, I feel like Melissa's acting in this one was so much better than Scream 5, especially with her facial expressions. So
yeah.
much better. So I enjoyed her performance of this one a lot better than Scream 5 though.
Me too. 100%. I thought she was phenomenal in this one. Was definitely a scene stealer. I also want to give a little bit of credit to as someone who I don't think had a lot of opportunity to show some acting chops the last time around, but Mason Gooding, Chad Meeks Martin
Hmm.
this time around really got to be in the forefront a little bit more
Yeah.
and really show some of the acting. And I could have laughed at this, but I never put two and two together. I saw his name, I know his name.
Hmm.
Never for a minute thought that his dad was Cuba Gooding
Yeah.
Jr. by any means, but
Hmm.
I get it now. It makes a lot of sense, which is
Yeah.
fantastic. But he's really did shine in this one
Hmm.
throughout the movie. One nitpick I have with the core four is that they all not only did they all make it, but there was
Hmm.
no consequence because Gale made it too. If they would
Yep.
have at least let Gale's attack lead to her passing, I
Hmm.
think it would have been a little bit less nitpicky from me in that sense. But I really wish, especially like they're freaking invincible. They're more invincible than Ghostface because I mean,
Yeah.
Chad has taken quite the beat down at this point in time. I mean,
Yeah. I thought
I'm
he
pretty
was
sure.
done after this. Yes.
Yeah, like Dewey got stabbed like what once in the first movie, and he had
Yeah.
the pinched nerve in the process to have
Hmm.
his arm all screwed up in the
Yeah.
second one. I mean, Chad now not only got messed up in the last going around, but this time around, that double stabbing from the brother and sister combination, I was like,
Hmm.
he's finished once and for all. But no,
Yeah.
he somehow makes it along with his sister, along with both both of the Carpenter sisters there as well too. And again,
Yeah.
like Jenna Ortega took quite the beating in this one as well too. She really got
Yeah.
stabbed around and pushed around and everything, and managed to live to see another day. Which I get it. I'm glad they've built a new cast that we can put things
Hmm.
around. The fact that they only briefly needed to mention Sidney and what she was doing. Like
Hmm.
she's gets that phone call, it's happening again. Okay, I'm getting the fuck out of here this time. See you guys later. Sorry, I'm done. I
Yeah.
thought, okay, perfect. And the fact of the matter is, with the reveal of who was behind this, you didn't really need her because it almost ties
Yeah.
zero to her storyline to begin with. So
Hmm.
I think that this worked without Nev Campbell. And I'm not saying that she shouldn't ever come back, but I
Hmm.
think that they did a nice job of making a movie that mattered without having it to have their central character that they've had for 5 films.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, how they were gonna like not have her show on screen, and I like how it made sense coming from Gail. It's like she sends her love, she's just gonna keep her family safe. But I did wonder if she was in the movie, how different the movie would have been, because I feel like it would like I feel like the killers and the motive would have been the same if she was part of it, because it connected back to Sidney somehow. And I feel like that's one aspect of it. If we do see her in Scream 7, I wonder how different that will be of her, like compared to Scream 6, of being present and actually wanting to show up versus not showing up for this one. um, One thing though that did bother me was the part of like the Gale change in like her character, because I feel like this Gale was shades of like Scream 1 and almost Scream 2 kind of Gale.
Mm.
And I feel like at the end of Scream 5, she kind of feels like a different person. It's like, I don't want to do this again. And let's just, talk more somebody like about, like, I want to write a book about like Dewey, who's more positive than this stuff. And then to see like she hadn't talked to the sisters because, Sam was, declining her calls. And not only that, but she's like, "Oh, you wrote a book about what happened, even though you told me you weren't going to." And thinking of that, I was like, I feel like Gail had made progress, and she made, she went back a couple steps. So that part I didn't like about Gail's character, though. I wish I would have been a little bit different there. Um, I did like the part of like her having or showing her as a, like the journalist that she is, and finding the shrine versus that nobody has found it versus the cops, because Gail is different. She does it in her way. I think like I also like that tidbit of like Corny Cox said that she made her own stunts for her scene, which she's like, it's the first time I go against Ghostface for a one-on-one. So I love that aspect of it. It's the first time she gets to experience that. And having that phone call and everything, I kept thinking about the phone call, then she's done. And my brother kept telling me, "Oh, it's predictable." And it's like, yeah, but you also want to kind of get the legacy characters out of the way, and bring in, the new kids, and keep the core four as like the main people. So I feel like if you have Gail there, I feel like she doesn't serve a lot of purpose at this point. The other thing that could be like, maybe that's the reason why Sidney comes back in the next one, but why though? So I feel like I would have gotten rid of Gail on this one. I feel like her just telling the girls, I'm sorry for what happened, and like tell Sidney he didn't get me. Done. You would have just left her there. And I feel like she doesn't have Dewey. She didn't have Gil beside her. So I feel like it would have made sense for her to like die by herself the way she did.
Yeah.
So I think those were the like parts that really like stood out to me with the writing there too.
Yeah, and I think that you could have beautifully opened up a seventh movie even with having even the gravestones of Dewey and Gale in the same area or something like that. And if you're having Sidney back, she could be visiting them. I think that
Mm.
it could have been something along those lines. The only way I see using in the next one would be if this thing does go more globally, and if they go with the idea of a cult of Ghostface, where you could have multiple killers that have nothing to do with each other simultaneously doing these killing sprees, whether it be across just the US or whether it be worldwide or something like that. I don't
Mhm.
know how you would condense it into a tight knit little film, but I think that the way the directors are going, it seems to be going bigger each time. And I feel that's the way they've got to go if they're going to go one more. Well, not if they're going to go one more round. I think it's pretty obvious that
Mhm.
this movie broke all sorts of records. 7 was pretty much greenlit before I walked out of the theater. I'm pretty sure on this one. I'd already heard rumors of as early as
Mhm.
this summer or spring to start filming part 7.
Yeah, it does make sense too. I feel like the buzz that we had, and I feel like one thing that I love, like I mentioned it in the preview too, one thing that I loved about this one compared to that one was the marketing was so well done for this one. I'm not saying that it was bad for 5, but I feel like 6 did a lot. The job was well done for the marketing aspect of it, and I feel like one thing we haven't really visited will be maybe Sam's mother, and like her tying it up to her passing, kind of tied up that storyline of it. And like one thing that I was rewatching Scream 5, and I kept thinking, Tara says that her mom's in in a conference in London. So what if they do it in London, for the next one, of like the mom going to a conference, and something about revisiting her past, because still haven't met her mom, and we still haven't talked about what happened to Sam when she was gone all those, I think it was 5 years from Woodsboro until she came back to visit Tara. So I feel like those are little gaps that we can go revisit later on too.
Oh, there's all sorts of things, and I'm glad that they've done enough of building, say, the core four and everything, that they're the focal point now. They're the interest. The Carpenter sisters. We want to know what's going to happen with them next. I think that they have a great dynamic too. They work well as a pairing. with being sisters and everything too. I also got to bring up again with Gale, because there was the scene where she starts to reveal that she's gone back to being the same old heartless Gale that we're used to in every other movie of the franchise. And yeah, well, someone was going to write a book about it as a nod to the first movie, and then of course Sam goes to take that swing at her and misses. She goes, I've been through this before. And then all of a sudden, just from off screen, we see that fist coming out, and it's Tara sockered her in the face. I thought that was a beautiful touch. Again, it was a nod to what we've seen, but giving it a little bit of a different twist. So it was a nice little Easter egg throughout this one that they provided to the fans. So much fan service throughout this entire movie. And you said about the marketing. Yeah, I think it's almost like it felt like they were a little bit afraid to pull the trigger too heavily with 5, because they hadn't blown things out of the water with 3 and 4 in terms of the box office. But once they saw what 5 was capable of in the hands that it was in, suddenly that changed. And 6 all of a sudden got the type of level of marketing that it truly deserved. Probably the best marketing of any film in the entire franchise. And I feel like 7 is going to take it that one step further. Like, there's no way that they're going to undercut the advertising for Scream 7, because they know they're sitting on a gold mine at this point.
Yeah, I feel like you've grown such a big audience at this point. Like, all I see is on my timeline is Scream at this point, Scream and wrestling right now. So I think it's built such an audience now for the people that like, especially like a younger audience, for people that weren't there for the ones in the 90s, to the point that that's all I see. All I see people is like, oh, this is my round 3, round 4. And I was like, holy crap, I've only seen it twice. I feel like I'm failing at this now. But I've seen like the rise in the like the fans of it. And I notice it because I feel like, especially like the hot topics in my area, that tend to put things based on what's hot right now. And all I see is getting emails from the Ghostface merch they have. So it's like I grabbed what I could at that moment, especially. But that's when you can tell like it's gotten to a point that like we had to put it in the different stores and different places. And all I see now is like bookmark. Even I like one of my favorite shops is like bookmarks here, and then the other one has this over there. And I was like, holy moly, why can't I find a Ghostface right now? Because so many people talking about it that they're making so much of it. So I think it's also interesting to think about like how the marketing has affected the audience, but in a positive way. Like, it's done millions now at the box office, and it's incredible. I think it's been not even a month yet, because it came out March 10th, and it's done so well already. So I can only imagine. I'm just ready for it to hit into the steel books. I can just purchase my precious copy of my rest of my collection.
Yeah, well, it doesn't take. That's the thing I find with movies nowadays, is that they don't sit in theaters for very long. So I try to my best to get out and see a movie once, and then once I can get an available copy to purchase, I go and purchase it, and then I will get deep into watching it. I have seen Scream 6 twice though, and will be many, many more times once I officially own a copy, because I can't go without having a full collection. It just bugs me. So Scream 6 will be added to that collection as soon as it becomes available. Plus, I'm a stickler for having a physical copy of things. I like that there's extras. That's the best part about horror movies on Blu-ray. I love the extras all the time, and I'm sure there is going to be tons of extras when it comes to Scream 6.
I hope so. That's what I want.
I'm really hoping for even commentary from the directors. I want to get inside their mind and learn a little bit more about the way they've taken this franchise and just turned it into something massive at this point. I mean, I love Wes Craven. I always loved Wes Craven's work, but these two guys, they bring back that kind of love to these types of series for me that I thought might have been gone, because it just, I'm not gone for me on a personal level, but gone in terms of like seeing a theater erupt for something so big. And not since Scream, the first one, came along, has there really been that impact from a new series coming out. And I remember when the original Scream did come out, I remember seeing the trailers for it, and I was at that age where it's like, okay, this is it. Here in Canada, they had a system where this was rated 18A, so no, young Rob couldn't go to it at the time. So unless I had an accompanying parent, and when you have parents that don't like slasher films, it kind of sucks trying to get to them. So I had to wait till a video release for the original Scream. I did see 2 and 3, 4, 5, 6 theaters, but it's just, it was, I remember that coming out, and it was a dud at first. It actually didn't draw the money they were hoping it would in the first couple of weekends. I believe that it went up against Beavis and Butthead Do America, if I'm not mistaken. And that movie was killing it at the box office. Scream
Mhm.
was floundering to the point where there was comments from publications at the time that were saying slasher films are completely dead, was a lot of the comments that were coming out. And then all of a sudden buzz started happening and people started talking about Scream, and suddenly people were going to the theaters and it picked up momentum. And by the time it hit that video
Mhm.
release, it really was a huge success. And I think that the directors of 5 and 6 have revitalized that love for slasher films in a theatrical setting once again. My
Mhm.
theater was packed. Like, and being in Saskatoon and seeing a packed theater for a slasher film on a Friday night is a rare thing, and
Mhm.
they were packed in numbers in our
Mhm.
theater. I don't know how would yours again. I imagine packed house.
I don't remember how many I had, but I know there was a few of them. But in mine was like it was more towards like opening night, and it was a Thursday, so I wasn't expecting a lot of people being a weekday. But I even now I think it's been over now that it's like I said, not even a month yet. When I went to see it the second time, there was not many people in the movie theater, so my sister and I were able to like she was able to like like tell me things during the movies that was happening, and I was able to tell her back too. She's very young too, and I like how she from the movie came out. She's like, I want to see it with you. So I told her once I came back from my trip, I would take her. So I was like, okay, as I promised, here I'm taking you to go on a little date together so you can watch Scream with me. And she was so excited. But even seeing somebody like she's even like a little bit older than I was when I was watching the first one. So it's incredible to see if like she's watching so many TikTok edits, and that's what like she's like, I want to see this. She's like, I already love this one. I already love this character. I'm like, you haven't even seen it yet. So it's incredible to see like how how well it helps with now. I think another aspect of it is adding the part of social media to it, because if you think about it from like I feel like for the first trilogy, you had a lot of like shooting things happening, like the Columbine shooting, for example, and things like that that we saw it in Scream 3 as it happened, the violence in cinema kind of thing. So I feel like that affected those kinds of movies in those times, but I feel like now it's more accepted than before in that sense of it. And I feel like the social media aspect of it does help a lot too. So that's why I feel like that's why it's getting more popularity now than it did beforehand. um because I remember watching it before when I was younger, and I don't know why I still remember the movie years later, and I don't remember how old I was when I watched it. Like I even told my parents, "I'm judging you for letting me watch these movies when I was so young," because I remember watching them for some reason. So I didn't get to see like anything in the movie theater until Scream 4. I was always hoping
Oh,
that something would happen. So Scream 4 was the first one that I was able to watch with my siblings, and even they were like younger than me. I was 18 at the time the Scream 4 came out, and at least for I had to bring them with one of my friends so we could go all four of us in the movies. But even now, like my brother's another one. He's a big fan of it, not as big as I am, but my brother's a big horror fan, and he likes Scream. And even watching the movie, he was taking notes of like who his guesses was or what guesses were for the killers. And even now, he's like, I think this is my favorite Scream movie so far. He's like 5 was okay, it wasn't bad, like it was all right. But watching this one, he was like, "This is my favorite one ever." After this, and I was like, I love hear him talking so positively about it because I was not expecting that after Scream 5. And he was even telling, I think it was one of his friends not too long ago. They were like, "Oh, what movie should I watch at the movie theater?" He's like, "If you haven't Scream, go watch it." He's like, "I haven't seen any of them." And he goes, "Well, let me give you some homework. Watch all the Scream movies, and then you watch the new one because this one was really good." Like he was talking that positively about it. So it just gave me that hope of, if he's loving it and he didn't like the other ones before, there's still like the more progress that could be made with Screen 7 as well.
yeah. Now, yeah, and the more we talk about this one, and the more I think about it, the more I love about it. Like my little
Mhm.
nitpicks with it are small little nitpicks, and at this point, it's Scream 6, so I'm not shocked that I've got a tiny little bit of nitpicks. But if I'm thinking about this as a whole in terms of franchise, like, yeah, I liked Scream 5 a lot, but this one probably edges it out. I think it
Mhm.
just edges it out a little bit. The violence was amped up. The excitement level was amped up. Everything about it was just taken to a whole new level. It was exactly what I wanted with not being the same stab related killers. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I think this one tops 4 and 5 for me. It definitely tops 3 for me. So I'm saying this one, arguably I'll rank it in there with 1 and 2. I think that's how
Mhm.
strong 6 ends up being is that it can stand the test of time, especially up against the original couple of Scream films. And again, like we said on our previous one, not that I dislike any of those other Scream movies either.
Yeah.
I mean, you're comparing amazing up against almost completely amazing. Like
Hmm.
it's, and that's where I sit on this. Like Scream 6 is an exciting time, and I highly recommend people that are fans of the series check it out. Or if you got out of the series because you had a problem with something along the line, that's okay. You can come back into it and catch
Yeah.
up pretty quickly and still enjoy these films, because this one does a nice job of talking about the others, telling you about what's happened up to date. You don't miss a beat. You could almost walk into Scream 6 and not having seen any of the previous films and probably gotten by just okay, because they do
Hmm.
enough storytelling to get you there. So, in terms of where this one stands for you, like, is this rank up there pretty high for you as well too?
Yeah, I'm like the best way I can describe it after watching Sack Cherry was when he said, "There's no bad Scream movie."
No,
You know, there's no bad Scream movie. I don't have any bad ones. So the my ranking is not saying that one is worse than the other one. It just I feel like some like for this one, it kept my interest a lot longer than the other ones, and the storytelling I enjoyed it. But I was like, the original Scream is always going to be my number one. I feel like Scream 4 was probably the lowest to me in this moment, based on what based on the storytelling that it had compared to the rest of them. um 2 and 3, I'm like, I don't know where to put them, but I would say my second one is definitely Scream 6, and maybe Scream 5, and then 2 and 3 are like interchangeable in that sense of it. But my least one is definitely Scream 4 in that sense, in that part of it. Just I feel like the story didn't stick as well as the other ones did. But I know I love the action. Even in thinking about it later, I didn't think about it until I talked to my sister. She's like, there was barely anybody getting killed in this one, because when you think of it, Mindy gets stabbed, she doesn't get killed. Gal gets stabbed, doesn't get killed. Chad is the other one. The only people that really got killed were actually the killers in the movie. And she's like, the only one that, when we think about it, there was the people in the bodega. And I think this is probably one of the first few times that we don't have somebody following like a list of people. This one,
yeah,
just came about. It wasn't like, this is my purpose, I want to go from killing this person in that certain order or anything like that. I think it's one of the first few times you see, killing innocents, the people in the bodega, for example. And the only real person was like, the first one that got killed was killed by Jason. So it was his teacher. So she was not even part of, like, if they had any list, she was probably not even part of it. She got killed. And then the therapist, and then I'm thinking of Annika, who's the best kill in the whole movie. And then I kept thinking, who really got killed? Who got killed after that? I was like, not Quinn, not this one. We didn't get any kills until, and now the killers got killed. It's like, that's interesting. I didn't think about that. I thought more people gotten killed on this one than the other one, but they actually didn't. But I did want to talk about that part of, like, that scene, because that latter scene was definitely one of my favorite scenes in the
oh
whole
yeah,
movie. Oh, I loved from beginning to end the whole part of it, because I feel like the sequence started and I kept thinking, oh, the latter scene has to come sooner or later, and around this part. And I already had like the TV spots that we had seen, and it was the marketing. I already could pinpoint where they were going. And then when this one started, the only thing I disliked about it was the way that Annika got stabbed. I was like, how is she still climbing this ladder after she got stabbed the way she did? That was the only part that bothered me about this whole thing. But like having from the beginning, like I said earlier, having somebody like Danny come in and try to signal for Quinn, and even the aspect of like the group accepting themselves as a core four, and even like thinking that Annika's having somebody upstairs, and then when having Danny show them the video, them going upstairs, and even Mindy like trying to protect Annika by still telling her run when she did. I remember my sister was, she got started in that part when the jump scare happened there with Quinn's body. So I thought it was funny because I was not thinking she was going to react at all to that. But going back to like that part, and even the ladder itself, it was like, I already expected Sam to cross, and I already had a feeling Mindy was going to cross. But I feel like Annika was definitely reminded me of Amber's kill, like with the face and the special effects and that aspect of it. And I love how it looked in the end. It's like the way of like not even stabbing somebody, just shaking the ladder and like her falling, and that was the kill. So I think
yeah.
that was super interesting in that scene. What did you think about that one?
I thought it was fantastic, and again, it's going to make
Yeah.
people a little bit nervous, and and everything too, because again, you start to see down. and you realize just how high up they are. Those ladders are not very sturdy to begin with. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I've climbed ladders like that many, many times when doing different installs and stuff, and it's a little nerve wracking, especially if you're not a heights person. So I can imagine people who are really afraid of heights watching this scene are going to see that and just tense right up. And then when Ghostface is grabbing that ladder and shakes her right off of it, oh, what a beautiful touch. I mean, it's so creative and different. Like most of the things in this entire movie are so creative and different. That was probably, like you said, the best kill for sure, because you don't expect it to go in that way. You kind of get the sense of it once the ladder starts shaking. You're like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
pretty sure she's done. But I was kind of expecting, like, maybe get another stab in there or something. Like no, it's full on. He's dropping her off of it, and she falls to her death finally. Between that and the fact that people were complaining with the shotgun scene, I had zero problem with it because everything about this Ghostface, like they marketed it as different because this Ghostface wasn't going after a list, like you said. This Ghostface didn't have anybody in particular, just whoever was standing in the way, as
Mm-hmm.
Detective Bailey would say. That was their only mission: knock off anybody in the way. So we saw that in the store scene when the guy gets stabbed, stands right in the way, like, we have a problem here, buddy. And he gets stabbed in broad daylight right in the middle of a store in front of everybody. The store clerk,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought so cleverly done, when Ghostface looks up and sees the store clerk
Mm-hmm.
with the shotgun in the two-way mirror, in the mirror there, and ducks out of the way just in time to come back around, get the store
Mm-hmm.
clerk, and then finish him off with a shotgun. I thought that was so cool and so clever, and I'm glad that the directors aren't trying to just do the same repetitive thing. I'm glad for that scene, but even more glad for the latter scene. I think that Ghostface needs to up the ante a little bit and have
Mm-hmm.
some different, more interesting, unique kills in the movie, and we got those big time in this one. The death scenes are very vicious. The ones that do happen, even the ones that don't happen, the scene leading to them is quite vicious themselves. But we actually got decapitations in this one as well too. We had a severed body inside a refrigerator in the opening
Yeah.
scene. That was something else. I mean, that was almost like gore level wise on par with Casey Becker's death in the first movie when she's
Mm-hmm.
hanging by her insides from the tree. This guy's served up on a platter inside the refrigerator.
Yeah.
So there is so much cool, interesting, unique stuff about Scream 6 that I think makes it a huge standout. I think people are just going to love this movie. I've even had a guy at work that I've been talking to hasn't watched them since about the second or third one, but because he's very interested in the work of Jenna Ortega lately because she's been doing such amazing work, he goes, I think I might have to get back into these. And he loves the movie Ready or Not. And I told him, I said, look, I said, if you love that movie, give these
Mm-hmm.
last couple of Scream movies an opportunity because the directors have a beautiful way of doing horror that just works. And I'm so glad they're on
Mm-hmm.
board. I'm so thankful for this movie, and I'm so thankful that horror movie franchises are a thing again. They're coming back. They're huge. I mean, so
Yeah.
many big franchises are making their way back, and Scream once again is the reason for it. We even heard news, and I'm sure we'll have something later down the road on Killer Cuts about it. They want to do a requel to I Know What You Did Last Summer using the original cast members as well too. So Scream manages to influence what happens at the box office when it comes to slasher films, and thank goodness because I'm so happy about it, and I can't wait to. I'll be talking Scream 16 at some point. I'm sure of that.
60, oh my word. Um, but yeah, I feel like this was like very well done. Like I said, it's the first time we get three killers. I kept thinking back of like this reminded me a lot of Scream 2. So I wonder how similar, if Scream 7 will kind of be similar to Scream 3 in that sense of it. Um, I love the third act too. Sorry, even the details of the shrine, of like the way they keep, I even thinking, I was watching a video, I forgot what channel it was, but if I remember later I'll tell Bobby to link the original video. There was like, I the actress that plays Quinn, Liana, she had an interview, and she said that one scene that was cut, which is something that stood out to me in the third act, was that she said that apparently her, I think it was Bailey, if I'm not mistaken, him and Ethan actually killed their mother. It's just something that I thought about because in the third act I do see him wearing a wedding ring, but he never mentions a wife and they never mention their mother too. But apparently it's because they had their plan and the mother didn't agree with it, so she had to go. So it just takes me back to what you said of like, anybody standing in their way, and that was, the mom slash wife standing in their way of getting revenge for Richie. So they got rid of their mom before starting in this journey of being Ghostface. And I feel like that's something that they should have kept in the movie just to give us some background later of like how come the mother's missing from this aspect because we never hear about Richie's mom in any way. And even in the third act when they talk about the connection to Richie, they never mention her. And I wanted to go back to this something that I thought about too, and it's like I feel like this is something I wish I would explore a little more, is because when we get the reveal that we have Richie's movie playing in the background in this movie theater as the reveal is happening, and Bailey gets closer to it, and he said, there's a special bond between a father and his first son, which is a line that really stood out to me. And when they say first son, they point the camera at Ethan, and Ethan looks kind of upset at this when he's saying it, thinking back of like he's probably the youngest out of the kids. So I thought that was interesting, which is something I would have liked to see explore more of, like maybe how Bailey protected Richie over Ethan or anything of that aspect. I think like that would have been interesting to see as well, because I feel like from the get go, my brother even told me when Quinn said, "Oh, I lost my brother in a car accident," he goes, "That's his sister. This has to be Richie's sister because she never mentioned much about like the incident in itself." And another thing that when going back is that stood out to me too was when Bailey said, "Oh, I don't have any more kids," because he had lost his kid in the car accident and he lost Quinn in the other scene. So obviously not claiming Ethan as his son. So it goes back to that ties of like having that bond with Richie that he doesn't have with Ethan. And even he says it's like, I didn't like these movies, I didn't like the stab movies, but this is something he loved. So because he loved it, I helped him get this shrine. And I can imagine thinking of his father as a cop helping his son get all this evidence so he can collect it as a fan of the movies. Who does that as a father? And even like we have Tara telling him and even question his parenting skills, like what kind of father does this? You have not one but three of your kids be killers. Like no, no, what? So I feel like that family aspect, I wish that we would explore a little bit more, connecting it back to Richie, because even Richie, when he's with Sam, he doesn't really mention anything about his family. Which is something that I thought about later watching Scream 5 is like, he never mentions anything about them at all. All you see is like his relationship with Sam, and that's about it. And she talks about, I'm watching Stab, or I'm watching Stab to get ready, but he never mentions his family. So it's interesting to see, like, for somebody who doesn't talk about his family is really defensive of him. So, that's why it seems like there's so much going on with that, that Kirsch family that I wish we would have explored, because I feel like there's so much more I would have loved to learn about the family then.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree with you more. And again, this movie really gave Richie purpose, where I felt like he didn't have as much purpose in the first movie. Like we
Yeah,
mentioned before, he never did any of the killings. And so
yeah,
that was
poor
kind of
Amber.
interesting. I like the fact that they played up the idea that they were trying to pin this all on Sam, and that the rumor
Hmm.
was actually started by Quinn
Yeah.
herself in order to put everything on Sam. I thought that was very ingenious of the film to do. And I do 100% agree with you. I wish they could have dug a little deeper on Ethan and stuff and given him a little bit more character, because especially when that was mentioned, I wouldn't have minded seeing him somewhat turn a little bit and
Yes,
kind
I
of make
thought
him
about
want
that
to take
too.
over.
Hmm.
Because it's like, are you that much of a pushover that you're not going to stand up to
Yeah.
your bad dad? And then I start thinking to myself, wow, suddenly Billy Loomis isn't the worst dad in this entire franchise. I mean, he's not good, but I mean, I'd say he's second worst at this point.
Yeah, I did think about like that would have been a good way for him to kind of turn on the plan and kind of give you that aspect of like it's Bailey and Quinn here versus Ethan versus the girls, and kind of see who will go against who in that aspect of it. But I wish I would have shown a little bit more of like that family connection there, because I feel like they always talk about Billy and Sam's connection as father and daughter, and with the hallucinations. So I feel like I would have liked it to explore that part a little bit more. I feel like there was something else that I was wishing that we did a little bit more of it, but I was hoping for later, but they never did. um but I feel like I hope that they decide to like fill out the gaps and like tell us more about the mom in the next one, because we get everything from the backstory from like Sam on Screen 5 just dumped on us of like, yeah, I found this and I found that and then I ran off and then this is what happened, and just I feel like that you could do a little bit more of exploring her life in that aspect of it. And even now thinking of like we have the core four, plus we have hopefully Danny staying moving forward. So I would like to see something like that of like, that family exploration happening a little bit more. um I did like that part of like, I feel like that I like that they mentioned about that there was a part in um at the station that we have Kirby and Bailey talking about all the ghost faces going from the beginning. And I kept thinking we mention more some one of them more than the other one when there's duos, because they talk about more about Jill than they do about Charlie, and they talk about more about Billy than they do about Stu. Just like here, they talk about more about Richie than Amber. So it makes you think like they kind of make one stand out more than the other one. So I thought that was super interesting too. And I love that part of like Kirby when she looks at Roman, she's like, well, he's the only one that has done it by himself. So kudos to him for
Yeah.
actually being the way he was. And I was like, I love her, her sense of humor in this one.
Yeah.
Um, but it's just like those little bits and pieces of like, I like that they finally mentioned like the the part of the Loomis connection there, because we have Scream 1 and 2 being the Loomises, and then now with Sam being involved in this too. So I love those those little bits and pieces here and there that they go back to that. I didn't notice this until I was listening to Zach Cherry's review, but he does mention of the deaths are kind of off in the board. When they do put the one for Richie and Amber, it should have been, I think, 2021, and they put 2022, which is the movie release itself, not when the actually death happened. And I believe the other one was for Mrs. Loomis and Mickey. I believe they put the same day. I think it was the movie release instead of the actual date that the death was supposed to happen. So it's like, oh, he thought that was an interesting tidbit when it happened there too. It's like they went by the movie release instead of the actual dates of when it happened. But like I said, it's like I'm glad that this was something. If you think about it, we didn't have anything with Maureen either. There was like no mention of her in that aspect of like how this really started. This is something that I wish I would have had in the movie before. I would have like some kind of prequel of getting that connection between Roman and Billy and Stu and how that happened. And also because we mentioned it, Scream starts and the root of this is because of Maureen Prescott, but we never really see her kill. We never see everything her with her and Cotton Weary happening. It's like I wish I would explore that more in the previous movies. I feel like now at this point it's too late because everybody's aged, so it's kind of weird to do like a younger Sidney at this point when Neff doesn't look exactly the same as she used to look. But that's something I wish I would have give us a little bit more of. So I'm just hoping they do that with the next one, just show us a little bit more of the mom. Um, and then maybe her talk about the backstory between her and Billy, because I kept thinking it's like, how does she really feel with the storyline of Billy being with Sidney there? So it was like beforehand. And another thing that they meant that happened during the movie too that I thought was interesting was when Sam says she knows Kirby, and she's like, yeah, she was a senior when I was a freshman. So it's like, so I wish it would have given us more into their relationship like that, because they're the only ones that really knew each other from beforehand. With Sam and Tara didn't know her. It seemed like she never said anything, but Sam actually did. So I thought that was super interesting as well. But those are little parts that really stood out to me that I enjoyed as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I really do like how, again, you mentioned about the things that you can go back and watch five on that kind of played into six so well, which makes me believe these smart people behind this franchise right now have a big plan for seven. They've already got what they want to do with seven in mind, and I think that we've already been shown some of it. I think some of the stuff has been planted there on purpose, and that if we watch this enough, maybe we'll be able to figure it out. But that'll come with time. They're going to try to push this thing out quick. I believe seven is slated to hopefully come out at the beginning of 2024. So hopefully we'll have a March release date again around that time frame. So you'll have another birthday movie. That would be good as well too. But yeah, I think unless you got any other thoughts on Scream 6, I believe this movie's been so awesome. We were able to get a full hour out of talking about it. So, any other final thoughts that you wanted to mention?
No, I'm just looking forward to like watching it at least at home, so I can pause it and think back of like the connection to previous things. So that's what I'm looking forward to the most, when I can just get home and watch it a couple of times and just kind of look into it, because I was watching it kind of taking notes at the same time, so I feel like I could have missed a thing or two. So I'm glad I watched it a second time without taking any notes. But I'm ready to get my steelbook edition and then watch it at home so I can pause it a few times.
Perfect. Yeah, me too. I can't wait till I get that opportunity. It's going to be great to rewatch this movie a whole bunch and even talk about it more, especially once the seventh movie is ready to come out. But in the meantime, in between time, we're going to come up with another edition of Killer Cuts Chapter 3 sometime soon for you guys. So hopefully you'll tune in. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe on all the channels for our local establishment or for our channels as well, too. And I'm going to go over to you, Astrid. Let everybody know what channels they can find you at, what you got going on.
You can find me mostly on my Twitter at Astrid Pizarro and my Instagram Astrid Pizarro 20. We're recording this while it's being released on WrestleMania weekend. We have a lot going for WrestleMania weekend, so watch for our socials to see what we're acting, what we have going on. I do have a ladies wrestling showcase on Friday with a special guest. We have I got Stand and Deliver. I got WrestleMania Night 1, WrestleMania predictions, like everything's happening, and we also have Multiverse United on Thursday. So a lot of exciting stuff happening this weekend. So if you can watch it, even if you watch it afterwards, we don't mind. Please do so as well. But mostly everything's on my YouTube channel. So if you can, subscribe over there. I do have 2 recent interviews, one with Ashley Vega and one with Raylene from Wow Superheroes that you can check out. But yeah, everything's mostly there. If not, there's always podcast platforms. You can always find them here too.
That's right. Yeah, we got the platform here, our local establishment on Twitch and YouTube. Make sure to check our work out there. Of course, very busy week for everybody here going into the big weekend as well. But we thought we'd break up the monotony of pro wrestling with a little bit of scream action, which is great. But yeah, Thursday night, of course, this comes out on the Friday. So Thursday, you'll be able to catch the replay of whatever shenanigans myself and Pop Smokes got up to. You can catch Busting Out this coming Sunday. I believe this Sunday with Chris Parrish, she's worked out Lauren Goodnight being on the show, so she's going to be joining us in that capacity. Maybe she can keep us on the line, but I'm not too sure. It's kind of hard to do that with myself and Parrish, but you'll also see me on WrestleMania reviews all weekend long as well, too. So looking forward to being able to join yourself on screen this weekend as well, Astrid. And also coming up for Chapter 3, we will figure out what the plan is. I'm sure we've talked a few ideas, but we're going to keep you guessing. So make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and then you'll know soon enough when we're back with Chapter 3 of Killer Cuts. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon. Bye.